Jimenez, and I'm a writer and artist for Marvel and DC Comics, and I've been doing comics for about 25 years, and I'm a gay guy. There we go.
My name is Elegance, Bratton. I'm a film director and a film writer and a photographer, and now I'm an on-camera personality for ComicsVerse, and I'm also gay. That's it.
That's what we've got.
That's it. Is that cool? All right.
And we're at FlameCon at Grand Prospect Hall,
yes,
which will make your dreams come true.
Yes.
Okay.
Get into this space, though, darling. The queens don't play when it comes to aesthetics.
No. No. Well, it's really funny because you sort of walk in and immediately you can't help but think of like, oh, this could be Phantom of the Opera. That's going to be like an Evita moment from one of those balconies.
So you saw me earlier then.
I saw you. You're already on Instagram.
So 25 years in the business, yes, out the entire time?
Almost the entire time. Probably officially out to consumers about 3 years into it. Out to folks in my business almost from the get-go.
And like, that's kind of amazing because so much of like growing up gay is about imagining like what's going to happen to me when I become an adult, right?
Of course.
The world doesn't seem to be aligned with what you're interested in and who you are, and it's like I think it's really important that we celebrate Phil Jimenez and say that for a lot of these little, gay boys, gay girls, and everything in between, they get to look at you and say, this is also possible for me, and I think that's really wonderful. How do you feel about that part of your impact?
I guess I'm aware of that impact. What I look at essentially is the impact that comics had on me. So I'm incredibly grateful for the crazy people, gay and straight, that made these books and published them because I was told the story, young gay kid growing up in suburban California, feeling different, and imagining a world bigger than my own. And that's really what comics provided me. I've told this story many times, I was not one of those kids that thought, oh, the X-Men are me because I'm an outsider. I was like, the X-Men are fabulous. They live in a mansion in upstate New York, and they dress like drag queens, and they have these names, and they go to outer space, and they go to like the opera, and they fight supervillains. Their lives were grand, they were big. And for me, the fantasy of that was so important. To imagine a world that was bigger than my own, that was a huge driver for me. So whatever I am in comics, and I do think the creators matter on some level, what I hope is that the work itself and the creators through their work speak to swaths of people and say, bigger and grander is possible. I was a little bummed when the sort of street level, quote unquote, stories take precedence, or when there's a mad desire for realism in comics, particularly superhero fiction. And when I say comics, I should say mainstream superhero comics, because that's what I work in. Because I think it's in that grandness, that epicness, that overwroughtness, that possibility happens, that concept happens, where you're like, oh my God, life doesn't have to be here, it can be here.
Well, so much of this to me is like a product of queer imagination.
Yes,
Yes,
100%.
And this idea of like, when you live a life where your potential outcomes have kind of been delimited and kind of told to you, like, I mean, for me growing up, I thought I was either gonna like get AIDS and die, or marry some woman somewhere,
wow,
and I didn't, and it's like, but when I saw my first drag queen, you know what I mean? And I saw my first femme queen, whatever, and I saw how the hair and the clothes. I was like, wait a second, that's possible too. I could be that big,
right,
just as I am.
So it's so funny not to hop on the sort of fun home bandwagon, and to Allison,
yes, hop on it.
No. Because it seems easy right now. But I've known Allison, and I hope she understands that I'm so happy for her. But there's that song that they just played on the Tonys called "The Ring of Keys." And it's all about that young girl who sees someone living a certain way, like a super butch queen, she's got this ring of keys, and she just goes, that's me. And I just like, yes, yes, yes. Like for those people who are sort of brave enough and or have no choice but to live that way, to sort of express themselves that way, and sort of represent possibilities for other people, like that thrills me out of my mind. When it came to comics, I sort of feel like that expression for many people was through these characters. So all my friends who are drag queens, they talk often about the transformative quality of drag, right? They become someone else and are empowered by that person. And I feel the same way about superhero comics in many, many ways, that the transformative aspect of those characters is vital, like especially to our projection and to thinking, we might be this, but if we just do this, we can become bigger. Like, yeah, that's what's important to me. Yeah.
All right, so getting into it now, DC and Marvel artists for 25 years. How did you come across it? How did you learn that you could do this?
How did I learn? So I was able to draw from a time I was very young. I was a latchkey kid, so I drew all the time to entertain myself. I originally thought I was going to work in a museum or a zoo. I was obsessed with animals and dinosaurs like a lot of young kids. I thought I would design museum spaces.
This space is somewhere between a museum and a zoo.
Both of them put together. I'm going home. But over the years, I fell in love with cartoons and comics, particularly in high school. And in high school, friends asked if I could copy characters in the XMen. I started reading the comic books. I love the soap opera narrative of them, the bigger than life drama of them. Storm was like a drag queen, right? Like, so she's got the big hair. I was just like, I love you so much. I sort of fall in love with Wonder Woman and the Bionic Woman on TV. So I had a propensity for superheroes, the superheroic, the fantastical. I could draw. I understood visual narrative. And at some point I was like, I'm going to draw comic books for a living. I think what happened is I worked in a comic book store and we had visitors like Jim Lee and Adam Hughes. And I came to understand that it was a job, that people could actually make a living doing this. So I moved from California to New York to attend college. And then after my sophomore year, I was hired by DC Comics.
Holy crap, that's amazing.
It was what I call polite persistence. I had met somehow when I was at a convention around 16, I'd realized that the people that could give me work were not fellow artists, but editors. So I started seeking out the editor, I'm going to sneeze, excuse me. I started seeking out the editor who worked on all the books I loved, and it happened to be the same woman. It was Karen Berger. I met her over a period of years. I would contact her. She would give me scripts to read from. And to this day, she's still my comics mom. She doesn't know why. She's like, you must have had a nice face, because I would never do it with anyone else. But over those 2 years, she gave me this work, and it was strong enough to build a portfolio that allowed me to get work.
I'm blown away. Like, what did you say? Polite persistence.
Polite persistence.
So like, okay, I am a fan of the X-Men comics, fan of the X-Men movies, and all of that. I sense like ample opportunities for queer narrative, and I'm just wondering, for you as an artist, were there ever moments where you wanted to, like, maybe you sense some homoeroticism, or you sense something like that, and you're like, maybe I want to turn this up? And what was that like? How was it? Were you at the stage where you were able to say, well, maybe we can make this a little, play into this and make it a little gayer, or did you ever do that?
This is a long and interesting conversation, and it goes to things about sensibility and aesthetic. And so I was a very earnest young artist, and what I say by that was these were superhero tales, and I was going to tell superhero tales. I think I'd probably forgotten some level about the subtext. I took it all quite literally. So if Batman was fighting the Joker, I wasn't really looking for sort of the homoerotic subtext of that. I was like, he's got his batarang and he's going to hit Joker in the head, but oh, like if Joker's hit this way, he's got to fall this way. It's a really mechanical approach, I think, to storytelling. What I think, though, is that just seeing the world the way I do, I think any other person navigates the world in a very specific way. Because they are raised with a sense of difference, they may or may not accept that, and especially if there are layers of difference, right? So if racial or gender or ethnic, even language difference, and then sexual orientation. So for me, there was definitely, my work always had an othered quality simply because of the way I navigate the world. So I was aware of things like hair, how to draw hair, what women wore. Oh yeah. But things like that, I think, quite frankly, straight eyes wouldn't necessarily catch. Or people who are not othered, people who are mainstream would not necessarily be aware of. And so it feels like, well, I didn't intentionally interject I would say, subtext or even overt text into the work. Just my sensibilities gave it a life that I don't think any other artist would have. And I think that's true of any sort of othered artist.
What period were you drawing X-Men, or are you still drawing X-Men?
No, I drew X-Men twice. I drew it in the early 2000s and like 2003 and 4, and then I want to say 2008, 9. So I drew a couple different periods, and then I drew Wolverine just for a couple of issues. And talk about like a really interesting character, not to get nerdy, but with like who can be so queer and yet so mainstream, hyper masculinized at the same time. I didn't actually think I would like Wolverine until I started working with him, and that character is so well drawn. So broadly drawn that you can play any beat with him and he'll ride with it. And so I could make him like the guy with the claws, like, you know, killing people, or I could queer him up, and it didn't matter. He totally worked that way. So some of those are my favorite characters to work with. Yeah.
Okay, so, well, first off, I can say that I did look at X-Men during the early 2000s, and Storm's hair definitely gave me life.
If Storm's hair is not this or this, they're doing it wrong. I don't know if you spoke with Daniel Ketchum. Have you seen Daniel Ketchum?
Yeah.
So, do you know who he is?
No.
So he's the editor of X-Men. He's around right now.
Oh my god.
I've seen him a couple of times. You need to talk to him.
Okay.
Storm is his everything.
Really?
Oh yes. Oh yes.
So, okay, so, wow, I'm just gagged over like how much like history I'm learning right now. I'm gagged.
I'm just gagged how old I am.
Well, I mean, that too. I'm old. Don't get it. You see it.
I didn't shave this morning, so I'm like, okay.
But like, I mean, when it comes down to it, I'm really curious about like your artistic influences as well. Like outside of comics, like what type of things are you consuming visually that inform your aesthetic and sensibility?
So I say this with no great pride, just as a matter of fact. My sensibilities are hyper mainstream. So I was a kid who watched a lot of mainstream TV. Ranging again from Wonder Woman, The Bionic Woman, to Charlie's Angels, quite frankly, to Dynasty and Falcon Crest, right?
Alexis.
Right. Oh, please. There's that wonderful thing I'm shouting out BuzzFeed where it's like 18 ways to throw shade. Have you read it? And it's Dominique Devereaux. It's this amazing scene where Dominique and Alexis meet for the first time, and it breaks it down. Like every moment, Dominique just like gives Alexis shade. It still makes me smile. It's so great. Anyway. So my sensibilities are mainstream. My comic sensibilities were mainstream. What changed my life and sort of expanded that was moving to New York City and going to art school, and then being forced, not even forced, being eager, but certainly forced for assignments to start venturing out to see street art, fine art, modern and ancient art, theater, films that were not mainstream. Quite frankly, it helped, I think, being in New York City. Suddenly I'm surrounded by, not to be sort of cliche, but just a multitude of different kinds of people that I was not growing up. And I'm going like, oh my gosh, meeting people through school, meeting people through work, and venturing into different worlds. Suddenly I was exposed to all sorts of art and flavor and again, language and ways of seeing that I just had never experienced growing up. And that, I think, is what informs me. Specifically, one of the things that changed my, like, say, inking style was studying 18th and 19th century Japanese ink prints. Yeah, like that, for example, was one thing that transformed my experience in school because I studied woodblock, so that's one practical thing that changed. I had wonderful teachers, a guy named Jack Endewell, who was amazing, an old school illustrator who didn't draw in line. All I do is draw in line. But he was like a painter, and we fought bitterly, but found this amazing middle ground. So I would say that there were people in my life who were mentors who absolutely transformed the way I worked, and then simply moving and being in a space and being open to the world around me, allowing it to transform my work, also shaped it. Fashion is also a big, and so. You can see Alexander McQueen, for example, in a lot of my design. It's fantastic. And again, I feel almost cliche, but it's funny when I design costumes, superhero costumes, I use fashion as reference all the time, not other costumes, which makes them very difficult for other artists to draw. So if I draw very simply, if I draw very elaborately, a lot of these costumes never quite look right unless I'm drawing them because they don't understand, other artists don't understand the reference. And I say that not that they're incapable, I just don't think they know what I'm drawing from.
Those bitches are late.
Because, well, no, I just think they're like, I just think that has to be with the LGBTQ, right? Like, I'm looking at these sources over here, and quite frankly, I wish I was looking at these sources. I mean, I kind of stop at some point. I wish I kept going, because I think my work would be even more interesting.
Thank you so much, Phil.
Thank you. It's lovely meeting you.
Likewise.
It's terrific.
And that's ComicsVerse at FlameCon. I'm Elegance. I'm signing out.